Well, what's going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to Brothers Y'all Good. My name is Jason. Typically, you guys will see Mike. He usually does the introduction. He introduces himself and introduces me, but Mike is being highfalutin tonight. He decided that business travel to make his living and to support his wife and his dreams, he decided to go out of town instead of be here. So we will not judge him tonight. But we hope that he has good, safe travel. Mike, going to miss him tonight, but I am super excited tonight to have the two gentlemen that we have on tonight. As we begin our series on the Divine Nine, we do have two members tonight from the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And what Mike and I decided to do is start in the order of their beginnings. And so we'll hear a little bit about the beginnings of this organization and have a conversation with these two brothers right here. But before we do that, in customary fashion, what I'd like to ask each one of you brothers, and I'll start with you, Andre. Brother, you good? How was your day today?
First, thank you for having me. Every day above ground is a blessing, and I have to say I'm blessed and highly favored. So yes, I'm definitely good. Got to get a walk today. We're coming to you from America's finest city, San Diego. So it's definitely a day to walk out there amongst the folks. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, right on, man. I'm super glad you're here. That's good stuff. And my guy, Mr. Johnnie, brother, you good? How was your day today?
I'm doing good, man. And also thank you for having us on. It's an honor anytime we can hook up with the man that runs San Diego. So I'm definitely looking forward to our conversation today.
Who are you talking about? Is there a fourth guest on here that I don't know about? I have no idea who you're talking about, but all right, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, okay.
Jason, I was telling my wife about this, and I was like, yeah, I was trying to describe you, and she's like, she wasn't able to place you. I was like, oh, when you see him, you'll know him because you see him like
every event.
I usually hear, oh, you mean the white guy? All kinds of, I hear all kinds of the loud guy, the guy that's never quiet. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. Don't nobody want me to live my best life, and I'm offended. You know what I'm saying? I am offended.
Yeah. Don't forget about your newest pursuit with the bagpipes. You got to remember that.
Come on, man. Hey, listen, you know what I'm saying?
I saw that in a picture around Christmas time.
Man. I'm happy to post a video on here if y'all got a second to watch. I show my video, you know what I'm saying? I ain't scared. Yeah, man. That's the Irish and Scottish in me. You know what I'm saying? Thankful to my Northern European relatives that I got that Scottish Irish thing. That's good stuff. And man, I'm super glad to have y'all, man. And I'm good too, man. I had a really good day. It was a long day. I stopped taking my ADD medications because I'm switching it up, and it really makes a difference in my days, my energy stuff. So, but man, I kind of feel like Dre said, man, any day alive is a good day in the grand scheme of things. Aside from any of the troubles that I may face or whatever, I think where I ground myself is that every day being alive is definitely a good day. So I'm blessed. And so, man, I just want folks to know Brothers Y'all Good is more than just a podcast. This is a real talk space where Black men can come through, open up, and get honest about mental health. This show dives deep into the stuff that matters: faith, fatherhood, fellowship, and all the ups and downs of navigating life as a Black man today. From dealing with stress, anxiety, and trauma to breaking through the stigma that's been holding us back. This podcast keeps it real with personal stories, as we'll see today, expert advice, and practical tools to help you find peace and strength. And this ain't just talk. It's about building each other up, sharing experiences, and creating a healthier, stronger community. So glad that you pulled up. Hope that you tune in, and let's have the conversations that heal. Together, we're breaking the silence, overcoming barriers, and helping every brother to say, yeah, brother, I'm good. So welcome to episode 10. This is our Divine Nine series, and we have two incredible men from the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I just want to say, man, I'm so grateful to have both of you men here. I have known Johnnie for, gosh, just over 2 years, 2.5 years or so. Well, it might be closer to 3, maybe, because I think it was the inaugural, I believe, the inaugural event where we were doing the mobile Santa thing with the union. I think you were at our very first one, right? So that we've done 3 so far. So it was 3 years ago. I was very intentional about including the Divine Nine into the things that we do in our union, which really is in the fire department, because I think it's important for people to see the excellence that's been around for a long time in America, and for folks to understand what these organizations have done for America. And so I'm super grateful. Every year, our union sponsors a table. We make a donation for a table, and we've been sponsoring the Martin Luther King run. I think it was a 44th or 45th or 40th. Like, it was some long. Y'all been doing that parade forever here in San Diego. So we're happy to support the work that you men are doing, and I'm very, very grateful. And Andre is a brother that, you know, we had a chance to all talk yesterday, and you know, he holds his humility really well. You know, he did a flex, and it kind of went right past me. He flexed yesterday, and I realized that they have some kind of, you know, the way they do stuff in this organization is that, you know what I'm saying, it's kind of like on the streets, the big homie stuff, but he did it in a professional way. And I said, oh, he just pulled some rank right now. So I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about like how these things are structured, but I'm super grateful for both of you brothers being here tonight. And what I want to start with, hey, Miss Tara, what I want to start with is really what you, Andre, when we hear, or when you hear mental health, when you hear just that word, what comes to your mind? Well, you know what I mean? What comes up for you when you hear that?
Sure. Stigma, first of all. It's evolving. You know, talking about what we talked about yesterday, you know, I am a past president of the local San Diego Alpha chapter, and that wasn't something that I thought I would be doing in my journey, but I was called to lead and stepped in, and I noticed during, I think it was my first term, right before Johnnie was made, that we were starting to see some suicides in our community, you know, and it was something that I don't recall. When I mentioned this yesterday to you, I don't recall seeing that when we were young. You know, you didn't see that in our community. So, you know, a few members, grandsons or sons, you know, that didn't have, like, on the outside looking in, didn't appear to be struggling, but were actually struggling. So that mental health and that stigma, because, you know, we don't talk about it. So it's something that definitely sticks out as the first word that comes to mind when we talk about mental health.
Wow, that's good stuff. Yeah. You said it's something that we haven't really seen a lot in our community. When you say our community, are you saying in the Black community, or are you saying in the Alpha community?
Yes, Black community, and I'm going through the lens, you know, I grew up a kid raised in Jack and Jill, you know, went to HBCU. I'm talking about that from my experience. You know, when we got together, there was never, ever any discussion about this kind of thing. You know, you weren't doing well, you just kind of had to suck it up. So you held it in. And then it wasn't until, you know, in the, you know, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago that it started to dawn on me, wow, we actually are seeing a lot of these things that you would read about, but it's hitting close to home because you know someone whose son, whose grandson, or you've seen an actress, like, you know, that you watched on TV, and then her son. So it was something that was unique in that perspective. So I'm talking about the Black community.
Wow. Yeah, that's good stuff. Where do you think that comes from? I mean, we something that we haven't seen. I mean, I'm not asking for a specific date, but, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we even know that, but what do you think, where does that stem from?
I think it's been just a part of our masculinity to not talk about these kind of things. You know, you kind of have to grin and bear it. You know, they call it the mask you put on. You know, you go to work, You know, you're growing up, you're hearing all these things you got to do. Like you get pulled over by the police. Everyone gets that talk, you know, 2 and 10, yes, sir, no, sir, just get home, you know. So we've kind of had this whole mindset of just survive, you know, but we don't talk about striving while we're surviving. We're just talking about just survive, just get home. And, you know, we'll talk about that later. It kind of gets pushed to the back. And I think there's just some, you know, there's a little bit of ego to it. You know, I think it's not something that people are comfortable sharing just because they're worried about how they'll be judged. And, you know, I think we do have our own myth of ourselves that we carry. You know, I think all of us have a vision of what we think we are. And it's kind of humbling to admit that you actually aren't good, you know, that you actually, you know, need some help. You need to reach out and get that support.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Johnnie, when you hear mental health, what comes to your mind?
The biggest thing that comes to my mind is just that mental health looks different for everybody, right? You know, still active duty Navy. I've been in the Navy for 19 years. So I have a lot of experience with different types of people going through their different struggles. You know, anxiety for me may look different than anxiety for Andre. You know, depression for you may look different than depression for another firefighter. So that's what really pops up in my mind. When you're talking about mental health, healthy for somebody is going to be different than healthy for somebody else. And you only really get to the bottom of that and really understand people is by having those conversations, right? It's by checking up on people, making those phone calls, sending those texts. When you get around them, like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? You know, what's been going on? So that's really the only way to know what struggles are people or know what struggles people are going through.
Yeah. You said something that's kind of interesting and that I agree with, and I'd love to hear from both of you. What does you said anxiety looks different on everybody. What does anxiety, if you could paint the picture of it, what does anxiety look like for you? Or what does anxiety look like on you?
Right. So I'll tell you, you know, I've been diagnosed with anxiety. I take medicine for it in the morning and in the evening. You know, so for me, anxiety is withdrawal, right? Anxiety is not sleeping at night because my brain is running. You know, somebody else, anxiety for them may be hyperactivity, over planning, overstimulation. So it looks different. You know, everybody's affected different by their anxiety or any of their other struggles.
Yeah, I would say I don't know what it looks like on me, to be honest.
Wow.
I think my wife knows because there's been times where she'll say, you know, are you okay? And I think there's some outward tendency you'll show. Maybe it's nervous tics, you know, things like that. But, you know, I kind of think about it when you hear something that makes you uncomfortable and you might laugh it off, you know, I think that's part of anxiety, you know, trying to get by, you're trying to survive in that moment. So I think for me, to be honest, I don't know exactly all the tells, but, you know, I think we all have it. And to Johnny's point, it's unique for each person.
Man, it's so interesting, right? I've been saying over the last couple of months, like my therapist challenged me with a few things and over the last few visits. And one of the things that I was challenged with was how I would not diagnose, because that's not what I'm doing, but I'll name someone's issue without really knowing. And I think that's very interesting to recognize that, because one of the things you just talked about, Johnnie, that you've been in the Navy 19 years. And one, I'd like to kind of go into life as someone in the Navy and how have you navigated coming up in the Navy? What does that look like? How have you dealt with the stresses, and what are some of the stresses that happen for people in the Navy, and what do you do with them? And because we know San Diego is a huge Navy town, So almost everybody is touched in some way by the Navy. You either got somebody in the family that's in the Navy, you in the Navy, you work for the Navy, or, you know what I'm saying, in a government job. So talk a little bit about your career. Where are you in your career? How did you get there? And just kind of what was that like? What was that like managing, climbing the ladder?
Yeah, so I came into the Navy in 2005. I enlisted from Dallas, Texas. And
you a Cowboy fan?
Come on, man. We've talked about this.
Well, obviously, the answer is yes. Obviously, I forgot because that's how I deal with trauma. I forget. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hey, Andre, don't tell me he didn't pull you over to that side, did he?
I'm Raider Nation for life, sir.
You got a Raider Nation like the goatee thing. I somehow told me like, yeah. Okay,
massive self-existence to be honest.
Okay, listen. Let me just say this for the record: the rules of engagement are this: that we got a visitor here. Look who's gonna pop on real quick. We're gonna add this man to the stage. Hey, Judge Washington, man. Hey, we're gonna get to your question, Johnny. I'm not done with you yet, but hey, we want to welcome Mike, Judge Washington. Man, glad you're here, brother. How did you end up? Let's welcome you. First of all, we got to do this, brother. You good? And then we're gonna get back to Johnny, because the pastors say when you late, you got to act late. So we want to act late, but we want to give your honor the opportunity. You good, brother?
I'm good, man. My flight out of San Diego to Dallas was delayed, so I rebooked it through Kansas City and got here an hour earlier. So all God,
won't he
all
do
good.
it? Won't he do it? Listen.
All the time.
Dedication.
Man, praise God. Well, it's good to see you. Good to see you, Mike. Thank you. We're just what we're doing right now is just talking about what anxiety looks like for Johnny has been in the Navy 19 years, 2005. And so the question I asked him is what has that looked like climbing the ladder? So you enlisted in 1995 in Dallas, Texas. And then I went off on a tangent about the Cowboys because it does something to my skin when I hear that. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. So, Brother Johnny, I'm going to give you the floor back and apologize for being so immature.
No, that's fine. Mike, thank you for joining. Thank you for having us. We already kind of went through our cordialities earlier, but so I came in 2005, right? I enlisted from Dallas. When I was in the recruiter's office, I told them, hey, I want to make money and make rank as fast as possible. And they were like, hey, your scores look good. You can be on submarines. I was like, sign me up. So came in on submarines. I did some schooling in Groton, Connecticut, and Kings Bay, Georgia. And then my first duty station was actually in Bangor, Washington. It's about an hour and a half drive from Seattle.
Okay.
So just with that, I've always tried to place myself in position to be able to advance quickly. I try to be more proactive than reactive. Try to make sure I get all of my quals done. Try to be sure to really, I don't like people asking me or telling me to do stuff. I want to try to find it, get it done. And, I don't like that space. And that might be part of my anxiety, but I try to be proactive about everything. But just since then, I've been on 3 submarines, the USS Kentucky out of Washington, USS Hampton out of San Diego, and then back up to USS Ohio Gold out of Washington. I've been deployed to Djibouti, Africa for 8 months. I've been deployed to Laos for 4 months. I've done some good leadership tours, took a lot of good classes. Here recently, I've been more of a supervisory position, more of auditing programs, things like that. But right now, I'm doing IT work, the security manager, or more so the deal with more top secret networks and crypto, and really just kind of planning for the next phase of life. But with regards to how that affects mental health, being on submarines, there's not a lot of communication with the family, right? When you're talking about missing opportunities and missing family events, I've missed funerals, I've missed graduations, weddings, hadn't seen any of my kids be born. I haven't, missed holidays. I've missed a lot, right? And so that in itself puts a big strain on the family. When Tara has to, always remind the boys, well, I can't be there, make excuses for me. Because once you come in the military, the job is first, right? That comes before family. They always say, hey, it wasn't a wife, it wasn't the kids, none of that stuff was in your sea bag from boot camp. So we need you here, we need you taking care of business. So it's a tough existence, but I will say what has kept me on track and what has kept my family on track is, I've been to therapy, been doing counseling. In this season I'm in now, I haven't been doing therapy as much, but I've been seeing a psychiatrist every 2 to 3 weeks. Me and my wife have been through marriage counseling twice, right? Just to make sure. The first time that was reactive. We were in crisis mode, but the second time it was proactive, and we're just trying to, make sure we're staying on track and making sure we have those skills to get us through some of these tough times that we go through. So I would say that's kind of how I handle it. I'm a big advocate for mental health, therapy, counseling, psychiatrists, any of those resources that we have available. I'm always talking to some of our junior sailors about, like, hey, have you thought about therapy so that you can vent and you kind of get through some of these tough times? Because, everything we do is high stress, high pressure. And it's not uncommon for people to walk away with a lot of trauma, a lot of definitely PTSD. I'm diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety. So it's just one of those things you have to manage, and you have to be on top of it and make sure you have a good support system around you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always known that, if you're in the Navy, you go out to sea, and I kind of always known that part of it, but I was always detached from it because I've never watched a ship sail away. I've never watched one come back. I've been here for 40 years. I've never done any of that, right? I know it happens, right? I know a million people that have done that. But for the first time 3 weeks ago, a friend of mine's in the Navy, and he actually got called early because of his qualification. He's a chief warrant officer, and because of the specialty he has, another ship needed his specialty, and so he was leaving work one day, and he called me after work, and he was like, man, I was leaving work and they told me I'm getting ready to go out to sea. I'm not supposed to be going out. Our ship ain't ready to go out to sea. We're not supposed to be going nowhere. He's a homeowner, all this stuff, right? Sons and basketball, soccer. And so he said, hey, the ship is open from 8:30 to whatever it was. The ship would be open in the morning for you to come and see us off. So I was like, man, let me take an opportunity to do that. And it's crazy because that morning, I don't know how to explain it, but I felt the energy of the people that were leaving and were going to be gone. I saw the reality. I saw the family saying goodbye as I'm walking down walking down the pier to go back. I'm watching wives walk up with their husbands crying. And I'm thinking, man, these people get ready to be gone for 9 months. Yeah. Like, you about to leave your family for 9 months. I'm like, man, that's crazy. I work a 72-hour shift at work, and I'm like calling like what? And it ain't like you got a bunch of phone service. So, man, God bless you for the service that you do and for the sacrifices that you and other sailors, Marines, people in the Army, whoever's serving this way does. Thank you for that, man. And I'm going to get back to that in a second to dig a little bit into that in terms of what that does for you mentally and how you handle it. But I want to ask you, Andre, like, what do you do for work? And let's talk about what stress looks like in your career.
Sure. First, I'll just say I get anxiety just thinking about going on a sub. So I have a lot.
Don't get me started, man.
But I work at Microsoft. I'm what's called a Copilot technical specialist. Copilot is our artificial intelligence product and platform, and I work in the education org. So what I'm brought in is to kind of remove any of those technology blockers to help us or help our teachers and our educators use the tools and understand, what levers and knobs they got to turn on to actually make it efficient. One thing, as far as stress, we know things changed at COVID, where now we're just used to being in virtual meetings like we did yesterday, and versus where we were before. So a lot of it is making sure that the stuff works properly. So I noticed it just talking to an educator, and they were kind of showing us a video on what happens with the students when they're troubleshooting. The audio is not right, or they can't get their camera working, and these kids just do all kinds of stuff. So I kind of take that to heart, you know, that our goal is to make sure that we've removed all those challenges so that they can do their work. But on a personal side, you know, I don't consider myself old at this age that I'm at, but I know I'm older.
Denial kicks in after 40, so I know what you're talking about too. I'm not either. I'm 13, if you let me tell it.
So I'm in a program called Leading the Future, and I remember one of my coworkers just happened to mention, "Why are you in that program? How old are you?" You know, that's when I started. So my stress is more about just knowing that I have less days in front of me than I have behind me. You know, and making sure you're like able to navigate this career and not get put out the pasture. You know, it's that, you know, it's different when you're in leadership, but when you're an individual contributor, you still got to show that you got the reps, you got the skill set, you know, versus like my parents. I look at them like, oh yeah, they're old. They can't do this. They can't handle the technology in the world that we're in that's fast moving and requires a pace that's very accelerated. So that's my main stress, is just that working in that space and knowing that, you know, you got people behind you trying to get you up out of there. You know, and that's one of those things I deal with.
Man.
Right. And I appreciate that, Andre, because that's something we don't talk much about either. That as you get more experience, everybody thinks it all gets better. But in a lot of spaces, people are looking at you going, you kind of long in the truth. Yeah. We need some fresh blood in here. We need some youngsters up in here. And so talk a little bit about that. We talked last night about trying to make the stories practical. How do you address that? How do you interact with the reality of there's young folks coming in all the time that want to do what you do?
Yeah. Well, I'm not naive. So I go in with my eyes open, knowing that, you know, as you get senior in your career, there is a budget salary piece. So just making sure that I advocate for myself, which is not something that, you know, I'm a humble guy. So having to make sure I'm reminding people of what my impact is and what I'm doing. That's one thing.
Hang on, because Jason knows I have to keep it real. You're an alpha man. You can't be an alpha man and a humble guy. Yes, come on now.
I was gonna call him out, but I was like, hey, I'll let him. I'll let him go down that road.
I do. Let me just correct it.
After this, we are going to talk about seniority and how Johnny's out of pocket right now. We're going to cause a little bit of a fight on screen. So
I may not love to seek the praise. I want to walk in and you just tell me how great I am, to be honest.
Well, the scripture says, "Let another man praise you and not your own mouth." So you did approach that, and
I want to walk in and go, no, stop. No.
But he will prompt us if we don't give him that. I'm just saying.
Excuse me, guys. I haven't heard any praise anything recently. What's going on here? I'm here. Hello.
I love language. You know, Johnnie knows. Yeah. I love language. But yeah, you know, again, it's the reality. I'm a little bit of a pessimist, so I'm always trying to make sure I'm protecting against that energy. You know, making sure that I'm trying to be optimistic that, you know, it might all be in my head. That, you know, the conspiracies I'm turning when someone asks me how long have I been there, how old am I just have to remind myself that, you know, this isn't really the main thing when we get to the point of what they're asking. You know,
you know, and I think that's worth looking at too, because you're in a, like, Johnnie, your career, you're supposed to get older and you're supposed to go into different positions, and you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, there's not this, you become a chief and a senior chief and you know what I mean? Like, that's normal. That's what's supposed to happen. But Dre, with you, it's like, wait, you're in tech, and tech moves at the speed of sound. And like, I never thought that I would get to the day where I'd have to like hand my phone to my daughter or a 9-year-old and say, hey, can you turn this noise off? You know what I'm saying? If I feel dumb. So you say, hey, that's not the main thing. But the truth is, you are in a fast-paced career that is used to seeing younger people on the line, maybe not in sales and in some of the upper part, but with the part that you do with the tech that's ever changing. How do you deal with that stress? Because I'm sure they expect you to produce, And you're an engineer by trade. That's you're an engineer. But so how do you deal with that daily stress of you literally, I mean, all jokes aside, you literally being an older guy in tech? That is actually a thing. How do you deal with that?
You gotta it could be exhausting if you're thinking of all the ways it can go wrong. So you have to be a lifelong learner. And I just remind myself, no matter what, this job is just one piece of me, you know. So if I take that burden off myself, now I know, what am I? Am I really a lifelong learner? Am I going to learn and develop my skill set? Versus just, you know, we'll hear it all the time. People say, are you educating? You'll just say the school you went to, what your degree is in, but that's not really what you are. You know? So I kind of have to just remind myself and find these other avenues. And for me, the fraternity has been a great secondary career for me to actually put my energy in. You know, whether you're doing a mentorship program and you're talking to kids and you see how they respond to the lessons you're teaching them, that feeds me, you know, that feeds my spirit. And while the job may not be the piece that's feeding me, it's, you know, it keeps the lights on, it keeps us, you know, eating and you're able to put your kids through college. The main thing is, you know, my mental health, my work-life balance, and making sure that I can, you know, see those things. You know, Johnnie mentioned not seeing his kids, and I've been able to see my kids. So I do acknowledge that piece right there at the end of the day, when I reflect, makes it okay. At the same time, when I look at my LinkedIn profile, if you notice, I'm gonna scrub that. You know, I'm not gonna have, I'm 40 years in this job, because I know if I need to find a new job, I don't want them looking at that. So where you would think that your experience would be something that is a benefit, it could become that brick, you know, that burden as you get older. And you kind of hide that little piece and just know that work is work. And these ain't my family and friends. So I'm going to play this game until I have enough money to live the good life and retire, like, you know, you're talking about, Jason. So
yeah. Real quick before we get on to too many things, and I wanted to get back real quick to you, Johnnie. And you know, ironically, yesterday, one of my friends, that's another friend of mine that's in the Navy, he asked me, and I just had to say, I don't know. But he said, what would you do if you had to leave your family, leave your wife for 9 months? What would you do? And I was like, I don't know. I have no clue, but I know that that's a thing, right? And there's a lot of trouble that happens when they're gone. I think yours is likely, and I'm just assuming, and this is what I want you to maybe clarify, but not only are you gone for long periods of time, you're gone in a submarine. So you don't get to walk out on the deck and get a little bit of air or whatever. When you're gone until you pull into a port, you are literally, however deep y'all be, underwater in a submarine. That I can't even imagine like what that feels like, let alone being gone. And if communication on a ship is bad, there is absolutely zero communication in a submarine. So how does that work for you when you're out to sea? How do you even prepare to do that? Like, what does that even, I mean, that just seems crazy to me. Like, how do you even start to do that?
So it really depends on the time of year that we're leaving, right? We've celebrated Christmas early. We've celebrated birthdays early. Sometimes we've had times where we had to celebrate birthday, Christmas, you know, New Year's, like all of that within a week right before we leave, right? So whenever we can take some time to make sure that we're acknowledging the family piece and celebrating something together, we try to do that. Another big thing for preparation is, and I can say this now because I probably will never go underway again, but I used to take cards and pre-write them for Tara, have everything ready, and I would give them to somebody and say, like, hey, mail it on this day, put a sticky on there, like, mail it on this day, mail it on this day. And, you know, as you move through, you know, the struggles in month 1 are going to be different than the struggles in month 3. You know, by month 5 and 6, she's tired of the boys. You know, things have broken down around the house that add stress. You you know, she just didn't have that best friend to talk to if, you know, if crazy stuff going on at work, right? So you get that opportunity to kind of preload some stuff just to make her feel, and it really helps me more than I think it helps her, because I get a lot of that stuff out, and I like surprising her and stuff like that. So it really helps me more than her. But I think if you ask her, she'd probably say the same thing. It helps her more than it helps me. So just knowing that we can have those types of things that we can do. Now, when we're underway, we do have communication. It's just not consistent, right? So
Gotcha.
In certain areas, certain times, we're able to email. There's times where I've emailed her and gotten a response before we went back deep, right?
Oh.
There's also times where I've gone, 3 months without us exchanging any communication, period. And we're, kind of cut off from the world. So it's been, there's definitely been its challenges. And to your point, seeing the peer before a deployment, it's almost like being at a funeral, right? It's like a gray cloud is over the ship that day. But when we come home, man, you tell the kids got their their Sunday's best on, face greased up, fresh haircuts. Got the pumps on, like we ready, so it's definitely a different feel, and that's what you look forward to.
Sure.
And that really helps get you through those that last month or so.
Because yeah, man.
Yeah. Let me follow up, Johnnie, because what's that like? Because sure, there's the excitement of we've been apart for months. We've gone 3 months, maybe without talking or whatever, having any communication. And there's that excitement in initially being back, but there's no way to catch up for that period of time quickly. So how did you manage that first week or so when you got back and trying to get back into a different routine, right? Because you on the submarine or on the ship, you got one routine, and she's got one routine because she had to get used to you not being around, and suddenly, oh, this brother's back now. Well, I'm used to doing things a certain way. How did you guys manage that, or did you have any struggles with that?
Yes, I'll tell you that the ships I've been on have been pretty good about when we pull back in. They give us we sit down and do a training, and it's like, hey, the motto of the training is always don't come in and take the remote, right? So you don't want to come in changing things. You want to come in and really be more of a support to your spouse than to be, a tyrant and try to put things back where they were. Because 6, 7, 8 months, that's a lot of time that things can change. So you really got to be able to step in. I always say, know your place, right? And just kind of let things flow organically. Now, is that, is it easier said than done? Absolutely. Right. You always come in with the mindset, but when you sit down and it's like we didn't do that before, or this wasn't here, or that wasn't there, or, just small things sometimes, because, I'm a creature of habit. So when things are a little off, I'm like, hey, what's this? Why we get this? Where did this piece of furniture come from? And so, just kind of, I've gotten better over time. My first ship, I was probably horrible at it. But by the time I got to, those last deployments, I learned to just come in and just kind of let it, just let it roll off my shoulder,
I know Tara be like, you want to know about this piece of furniture? You've been going 9 months. Shut up. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, man, hey, what?
Exactly.
You know I've been holding it down, and you want to know about this couch? Man, I'll stab you. Yeah. Yeah. No offense, Tara. Tara, I ain't trying to say you violent. I'm just saying, if you was, I understand. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So I'm telling you,
hey, listen. She said exactly. Hey,
listen, baby, you supposed to be on my side.
My bad, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I got beside myself. I'm sorry. Dre, one of the things I wanted to ask, and this goes for you too, and I think I'm not sure which one of you said it, but it was about being comfortable talking about things. I think it was in the beginning when we were saying how we noticed a change in like the way Black folks do mental health stuff. I mean, we, Mike and I have heard other folks before talk about how like we saw a rise in suicides and stuff. And that's something that we just never, I mean, I don't remember anybody that ever took their lives when I was a kid, right? I'll be 55 this year, and I've never had a younger friend, like never. And I mean, the way I used to get talked about as a kid, I just don't understand. But one of the things you said that I think is kind of neat is being comfortable talking about how we feel. One of y'all said that. And so I want to ask you, Dre, like, how comfortable are you talking to your wife? First of all, how long have you been married? And then like, how comfortable are you having these conversations about how you feel with her and then just in general?
Yeah. So I always mess this up. So I'm 30 years in the frat and 28 years in the marriage. Mike knows that, like sometimes I'm
yesterday, you said it really quick yesterday. I will defend you. You was like, you said you and I are almost the same age in marriage. So you said we're probably the same age in life. So just to your wife, he was quick with it yesterday. He came off the hip. So get a brother, a break.
But I say we're comfortable talking about it, but I think it's more for me. I look at my kids, and I remember when all these things were happening with the suicides, I was more worried about just checking on my daughters, making sure I said, "Hey, are you good?" Because we know they're stressed, and we've moved them around from place to place. Not the equivalent of a military kid, but kind of close because they didn't really have a home they would go to hang out with their friends. So, just checking on them and making sure that just when you see a kid that was, in Jack and Jill with your kid and they're dead now, making sure, hey, are you okay? And then, it gets to the point where you don't really feel you're getting a true answer. So now it's like me and the wife talking like, hey, did you talk to her? Is she really okay? We need to ask her friend. So that's kind of where I'm able to pivot, Like myself, I don't really, to be honest, I don't think about those kind of things, but I always worry that I missed the signs, I saw that dancer Twitch when he died, and I saw a picture of him smiling. They said, this is what depression looks like, so I'm always trying to find that hint, that tell that makes you know to say something. And then in the moment, even when you're talking, it's like, are you really talking? Do you really want to hear what's going on? Or are you just, asking, hey, how are you doing? And they say, fine. And that's the end of the conversation. So for me, it's been more of a, how do I open up, make sure that it's a safe space to even talk about those things. So you'll find out things about your kids, as they're growing older, and you're like, well, what was I doing that didn't make them feel comfortable to tell me, that they had to hide that piece about themselves. You had to find about it kind of on the back end. So I don't know if I answered your question, but, the wife and I don't think we've, again, we're blessed. So, we're at this stage in our marriage where it's I think the last thing we argued about was, something trivial, but nothing serious about like life and death and what we're going on. To me, a couch argument would be the big argument at this point.
Well, and yeah, you answered, you did. And just maybe if I could be a little more specific, how about just in general, how do you feel about talking about how you feel? You know what I mean? Like, what does that look like for you? Like when you're frustrated, do you feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm frustrated? And like what is that like for you? Does it take you a long time to be able to admit it? Those kinds of things.
Good question. I appreciate that follow-up too. No, I feel like I carry a fear that if I do reveal who I really am, it's going to freak people out. So my response is usually going to be muted, to be honest, in that space, because while I'm in the car driving somewhere talking to myself, I'm going through all kinds of rants and raving, and I've cussed out 3 people before I got to the meeting, but when I get there, I'm able to breathe, relax, and give a more muted answer. But yeah, I don't think I've actually honestly ever said, this is Andre. This is really what's going on in my head. It's always with a little filter. Because I just feel like it's, people can think you're crazy,
Well, let me ask you, not with anybody? You don't have brothers in your frat, you don't have members of your family. There's nobody that you feel that you're truly can be Andre with?
The closest person would be my wife, but even there, I know I feel there's a limit. I've never done therapy individually. So, just hearing more and more people talking about therapy, I'm thinking to myself, dang, I got to find out if I have access to something like that, but yeah, even with fraternity brothers, my biological brothers, I still think there's a limit as far as what you actually expose. I don't mean that I haven't had those moments of weakness, broke down, where, I have my older brother, he died a couple years ago. My father died right when Johnnie was made, and fraternity brothers have died. So I've had those moments of weakness and vulnerability, not weakness, but more vulnerability. But yeah, just on a day-to-day, when you have those moments and those dark moments, those dark thoughts, I don't think I've actually honestly said, let me go reach out to this person and tell them, to be honest.
I'm gonna ask one follow-up. I'm gonna turn back over to Jason because I see the expression on his face. I know he's gonna jump.
Go ahead.
But help everybody understand, how does that feel for you, Dre, to know that you're holding that? I know what if I used to be that guy. I've talked to Jason about the fact that I used to be the guy that I'm gonna let everybody see the image that I want them to see of me. Yep. And there's certain stuff that I hold back that I'm not going to ever let them see. And over time, what happened for me was it got to a point where I forgot who the real me was because I wasn't ever letting that dude out. And so, but I don't want to speak for you. So what does it feel like for you as you say out loud, I don't have anybody that I really let the real Dre come out to? How does that feel? And then I'm going to follow up with Johnnie and ask, as your frat brother, how does that make you feel when you hear that from your man? Because that's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's tiring. There have been those moments, like I said, of vulnerability, and those moments were very refreshing. The immediate feeling afterwards was, dang, I felt good to get that off my chest. It's very refreshing in that manner. But yeah, from a day to day, I would say, it does kind of, beat you down, and you do kind of, unless you're thinking about it, you kind of forget about it, put it in the recesses of your mind and move forward. And luckily, being a senior brother, as they call in my 50s, I can quickly forget some of those things that I'm thinking about anyway. So just being honest, Johnnie, I think I had a moment with Johnnie, this weekend, it's a senior moment that will pop in and you go, oh yeah.
Yeah. I forgot all about that.
Charge it to my head and not my heart,
Yeah. Those trouble things, there's a book, and then I definitely want to hear from you. There's a book that says the body keeps the score. Oh yeah. And so I think as much as we think we forget those things, the truth is that we don't. They imprint in our bodies and they leave scars and they create pathways that create protective safe spaces that we think that then, create other issues. And so I just want to say thanks for being truthful. You know what I'm saying? Like, quiet is kept. That's as good as being able to say how you feel. So that's an amazing thing right there. And I definitely want to get back to that. Yeah. But go ahead, Mike. I see you.
And I just want to say one other thing. I love what Dre said, that in those moments of vulnerability, when he shared, he felt better. He felt relief. And I want to stop and just address that for a second, because we're not taught that part either. We're not taught that in those darkest moments when, like you said, the death of a brother, death of a father, people are going to see me at what seems like my lowest, that if I let them into that space, I'll feel better. I'll feel supported. I'll feel encouraged. I'll feel nurtured. And we talked last night, and I was saying what I loved about this part of the series, talking to the D9, is all the frats believe in brotherhood, and all the frats want to encourage that. And so it's so beautiful to have you share that, because people need to hear that. Yeah, even when I didn't want to share who I really was, because I felt that that was me at a dark place, man. I lost a family member. It felt good to know that there were people there that could put their arms around me, either physically or emotionally, to sustain me during that dark period. But I wanted to go back to Johnnie. Johnnie, what did it sound like to you when you heard Dre say, "Yo, I'm in a frat with a whole bunch of brothers, and I ain't got nobody that I talk to"?
Like
Yeah,
that.
I've been working with, I've been working in the male, predominantly male field my whole career, right? So one thing that I do understand is that not everybody is going to share openly. Not everybody is going to share freely, right? But the big thing that I do value is that people know that I'm a listening ear. People do know that if they do want to talk, I'm going to, listen. And so that's what we can offer, right? That's all we can offer, especially as brothers within Alpha, right? I know right now, and I know Andre knows this too. If something happened and he needs to vent, he can call anybody, right? Anybody wearing these letters, and know that they're going to give him that time and that space to vent. And just like I mentioned earlier, right? For me, anxiety looks like withdrawal, right? So if I'm, if I'm not able to reach out, or if I'm, just go MIA for a few weeks, like it's like, hey, that's probably dealing with something. So like I said, I know mental health looks different for everybody. I know coping mechanisms are different from everybody, and how people deal with certain issues is different. So, I don't feel any type of way. I just know that Andre knows if he needs to call me, or he needs me to drop everything and get up way up in LA where he lives at, I'm on my way,
He's clowning. How do you how comfortable are you, Johnnie, with talking about how you feel? Right? How are you in doing that?
So I'm pretty comfortable, and kind of like we mentioned yesterday, or that I mentioned yesterday, growing up in the 90s, if you do therapy or any of that stuff, get diagnosed with something, it turn you crazy, right? I don't want to go to no shrink, or I'm crazy and this and that. So I think society has kind of removed that stigma, but as men, we still have the egos, we have the pride, we have all of that going on. So, but for me, just as far as how comfortable I am, I'm really comfortable with talking to Tara, right? I think she knows me inside and out. Kind of to Andre's point, right? Like, even when I'm not talking, she knows what I'm feeling, and she knows that, hey, I'm moving a little differently. So I think, more than anything, she's the person that knows me inside and out. Now, that's tough when I'm underway and I don't have that person, right? I won't talk to just a random person and tell them all of my business, or anything like that. But I will be transparent with, if somebody's asking me and I'm trying to help somebody, I will be transparent about my mental health struggles, my successes, and all of that stuff. I will be transparent about that. So I know sometimes it's better to hear it coming from somebody that you think is okay, right? You think everything is going right. So I'm comfortable to an extent, but definitely with Tara, I can talk to her about everything.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Real quick, Dre, one of the things I'm curious about, what would a space, let me see if I ask this and if it makes sense. I don't know how to, but
sure.
What would be a space that would give someone like you, who has this I don't think y'all ready for this truth. Someone who has that as their experience, or that's the way that they view it. What would be a space that someone like that would feel comfortable doing it? What kind of environment would be there for someone to say, you know what, this is me right now. I'm ready to lay everybody down. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know what happened. 7-Eleven coffee was bad this morning. Gas prices is high, and I ain't gonna do it. But I just want to say it one time. I want to knock one of y'all out right now. I don't know if that, but what space could be created that someone with that issue would feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think it's that, you have to build that trust. So whether it's one person, two people, three, that space has to have that trust in it. We're talking about how, we're fraternity brothers. Johnnie and I are fraternity brothers. I'm fraternities with Mike, but that doesn't really open up the trust unless that's earned. So over time, those relationships. Johnnie mentioned Tara. I have my wife JT. I've known her since '91. There's more trust there than someone I meet tomorrow, if I make them a brother of my fraternity. So I think that space has to be. And even thinking outside of the fraternity, just thinking of people, childhood friends that might knew you before you were you. I think that trust is something that it when you feel it. I wouldn't even know how to define it, except I know it when I feel it. And there's those moments where, if I'm salient and I'm sober in that moment and actually able to feel it, then it's real. Versus, if I'm inebriated or had a hard day and I had to threw a couple whiskeys back, and now I'm just talking just to talk. That's a different trust. Just being honest, I may say some things, but it doesn't mean it's really the safe space to your question that would let me honestly and soberly open up and express all those things.
Yeah.
Let me follow up with that, because I realized I made an assumption, and I'm always trying to work on myself on not doing that. Let me ask you, Dre. Do you wish you had a place where you could share, or are you like, no, I'm kind of good. I've been holding myself the way I've been holding myself for years. I'm not actually wishing that any of this was different. I'll roll with this all the way to my grave because I've figured out how to work it this way.
I mean, I think, yes, I would like to have that. I don't know how to get to that point. Like if I were to go start talking to a therapist tomorrow, I think it would take a while to build up that trust, to be honest, before I would start peeling back the onion that is Andre and showing him all my warts and such, all my insecurities. So I think at first it would kind of be, I'm probably trying to guess the right answer, trying to play along with the role play. But I think just organically, I think yes. But I just think that's something that has to be earned. It's not something that's just going to appear and present itself like now you're in this room and you feel comfortable. And it might just be the moment that overwhelms you. But yeah, for me, to be honest, yes, I do feel that, again, I've seen people with real problems and I feel blessed, that I have the life that I have and have lived the life that I've lived. But, like I said, my brother died. He didn't make 50, so. And to me, 50 does not feel old at all. It feels very young.
Right.
So when you reflect on that, you start to think, we're kind of lucky, to be at this point where we can continue our lives, regardless of what's craziness is going on in the world. The ability to just get up each day, I really embrace that. So yes, but if it never happened, I don't think I would be, thinking, woe is me down the line. I don't think I would, at least.
Yeah. What? Dre, what would be the consequence of someone in your situation? Just like, let's just say we hang up this call and it's just me and you on here, right? This Mike goes and Johnny's gone, and you just say, you know what? Tonight I'm throwing the fastball. It's going down, right? And you just tell me whatever it is that what is the assumed consequence, or what is the, for that?
From my standpoint?
Yep.
It's in general.
In your standpoint, or just, yeah. I say someone like you, because if we can talk in the third person, sometimes it's easy to say that person over there, you know what I mean?
If Andre were to just be vulnerable in that moment, I get you.
Yeah.
So, I think I don't know if there's a consequence. It's just that fear of the unknown. You know, not if you're stepping out on that ledge, you know, you can't pull it back. You can't put that back in the box once it's out. So, you know, so I don't know if there's a consequence. It's just more of a, you know, again, if you feel it and you feel that warm and fuzziness to be able to express yourself, then that's a great moment to do that. But if you don't have it, it's you're not being true to yourself, you know. And in that scenario, if I'm just unleashing all my demons to you, I think there's just a fear of what happens afterwards, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you have this mask, this facade that you're expressing, and now it's exposed, you know. So it's kind of like, now what? You know, what are they going to think of me now? And that's where the ego comes in. It's like, once I've done it, you know, I have this image of myself that I'm presenting. Now I've dropped myself down here. Now what? And that there's a little bit of fear in the unknown of where you go after that.
It's interesting you say that, because immediately in my head, what I was thinking about is when I do that, and I've been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous since I was 15 years old. And one of the things they talk about is when you become a sponsor, when you become sort of like the mentor of someone new, one of the ways that you get folks to open up is if you open up, right? And so that's what I was told. You got to do it to model the behavior. And what I found is that when somebody shared with me the things that they went through, for me, I was like, man, I'm not the only one. And then I started noticing, man, there's people everywhere that feel like this and just don't nobody want to say nothing. And so I created this whole story in my head that somehow I'm this weirdo and people gonna think I'm weird. And there's a whole bunch of leaders I have found that as a leader myself in my career, I have found that there's a bunch of other leaders who are carrying around a facade that are just tired of it. And they like, man, this ain't even real. And thank you for saying this. Cause like, man, now like I finally feel relieved for the first time in my life. Thank you for being real. And so one of my encouragements to someone that's in a position like that is to take a risk, because I guarantee like some of the things that I thought were such a big deal really weren't a big deal. It's a lot of things that are assumed, and maybe one day we'll try it. But we should probably just talk. And I ain't, you know, I don't want to.
Yeah, if I can respond to that really quick, I've been in those rooms where I've seen people do that, and I'm one of those people that's in the room going, "Dang, you don't really know each other like that." And you say, I mean,
right?
For real. You're gonna just spill it all out in front of everyone, you know?
Right, you oversharing. What you doing? You sound like that. Right. No, that's real. That's real. Johnnie, I wanted to go back to you earlier. You were telling the story about being in therapy with your wife a couple times. The first time you said it was kind of crisis based, and the second time was, I forget the phrase you used. In my mind, I was thinking more maintenance based, like things aren't bad, and we're just.
It was reactive at first, and then it was proactive. Secondly, I think he used the term proactive.
Yeah.
So the first time, whose idea was it, or whose suggestion was it to get into therapy? And then for the proactive part, whose suggestion was it to do that part?
Yeah, she probably kill me. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be transparent, but we were going through a period where we were really like, you know, it was, you know, divorce was definitely on the table, and you know, I didn't want to be that co-parent, right? Because I love my boys, love our family, and so when she suggested it, you know, I was like, let's give it a shot. You know what I mean? And so we got in there, and you know, the first session, I felt like the therapist was siding with her, and the second session, she felt like the therapist was siding with me. And, you know, it gets to the point to where, you know, by maybe the fourth or fifth session, we're locked in. You know, Tara in there cussing the lady out and crying. I'm in there trying to do damage control and not say the wrong thing to trigger stuff. And, you know, she was a pro at this. She was like, hey, when Tara's crying, you don't have to come over there and put your hand on her back or feel like you have to withdraw. She was like, you need to say everything that's on the table, everything that you're thinking, everything that you're feeling. And so for me, therapy was really more about communication, right? It was more about us learning how to be able to talk and express our feelings, but not get offended by what that person is saying. Now, do we still get offended today? Yeah, right. Like if she tell me like, hey, those pants make you look fat, right? Like I'm like, what you talking about? Like, I like these pants, And she told me one day,
saying stuff like that. Don't you mess with my friend like that.
Let me tell you, I had this pair of pants on. She was like, you're already short. You don't need to wear them. And so I still wear them pants. I'm not gonna let her do me like that. But therapy has gotten us into a space where we're comfortable saying those types of things to each other. We're comfortable, when I'm having a bad day, I'm gonna withdraw, but she knows how to approach me and to get me to talk and vent to her. And I'm the same way with her,
That's a question here.
Yeah.
So we're talking about you walk into therapy, right? Did the therapist matter, or were you going to say this no matter who the therapist was?
The therapist mattered, right? We specifically looked for a therapist that was faith-based, and we actually wanted a Black therapist, but at the time we were only, we were using TRICARE, and so we couldn't find a Black therapist that was also faith-based and took TRICARE. So the lady we had, she was a little small French lady, and when we first got in there with her, she was kind of just, kind of assessing us, learning us. And I'm telling you, by that third session, she was running the show and really facilitating some good talks. And she was, a lot of times when we talk, we have these issues, but we don't know what the underlying thing is. I'll give one thing for us, right? Like, I knew that, Tara felt like I didn't support her going back to school to get her PhD. Or was it I think it was her PhD.
Shout out to Dr. W. Yeah.
And so it was a couple of different things. It was one, I was thinking like, hey, you've already gone and got your bachelor's and your master's. Let's take some time off so we can be connecting as a family. Because at that time, mind you, I'm also going underway. So it's a big strain in both directions on the family. But she was looking at it as like, hey, I got this scholarship that's paying for everything. I need to go on and finish it. Not only because of the scholarship, but because if you take a year, 2 years, 3 years off, you don't have that same motivation, right? So
it's hard to get back. Yep.
Right. So as we get in there and we're talking about it, our doctor, Dr. Bias, she was like, hey, so what's really the root cause of this? What are you scared of? What are your fears? What are your concerns? What are you angry about? How do you feel when she does, even something small, like how do you feel when you come home from a long day of work and she's in there studying and you have to walk in the door cooking dinner, right? And taking the boys to practice and doing it all, and it really kind of let me see that, hey, I'm being a little selfish in this time, right? But it also let her see that, she needs to be considerate of how I'm feeling, right? And really just being in therapy facilitated that conversation. And so it's things like that that really helped us get past some of those barriers that we had. And, we went back, like you said, it was maintenance, right? It wasn't, we didn't feel anything, but it was like, hey, let's get back in here, right? Because we enjoyed the experience, and we were like, hey, let's just see what else we can get out of it now that we're not coming in crisis mode. What do we get out of it now? And it's really just the same thing: how we're communicating with each other, how we're approaching as a team some of those difficult situations. They taught us that when you talking about our relationship, our marriage, think of it like a bank account, right? So, you got deposits and you got withdrawals. Anytime you get to the point to where you're withdrawing more than depositing, you're going to get in crisis mode. So what are those deposits, right? Buying flowers, writing a note, supporting each other, whatever we're doing. Date nights, right? Date nights are a big part of what we do. We don't care where we at. We'd be in town doing something. It's like, hey, we got to have our date night, those types of things. So All of those are deposits. But, as far as the withdrawals, how do you withdraw from that bank account? Maybe we did have an argument about that couch. Maybe we did have an argument, and I'm being transparent with her and telling her like, hey, I'm not feeling seen. I'm not feeling loved or whatever. That's a big withdrawal. But when you have some deposits in the bank, you're not going to go in the negatives. Now you may not be sitting at $1 million. You may be sitting at like 100, but you're not in the negative. And that's what's important. So.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. That, this has been super good. It's funny how fast an hour and almost 15 minutes can go by.
Yeah.
When we're having, and there's so much, and I don't want to leave without saying a couple of things. I definitely want to hear about your organization because I think that that's important. But I just want to say, just appreciate both of y'all being transparent like this. This is exactly, this is the things that people are like, man, I can relate to Andre, man, Johnnie, that's me right there. You know what I mean? And so definitely want to say, I know I can speak for the two of us, but Mike certainly can speak for himself, but just very grateful for the amount of transparency that both of you have displayed in this conversation, man. Does not go unnoticed, and feel super blessed to be able to do that. I wanted to ask, like, does your fraternity, let's just talk real quick about your journey to becoming an alpha. I just want to kind of talk about that real quick. So I think that that's important. And I'll just share a quick story. I was at Barbara Scotia College in Concord, North Carolina in 1989. And I don't know what the event was, but it was in one of our a little building across the street from our dorm. They had this little community room or whatever. And I just remember it was dark. And all of a sudden, these dudes, one group of men came out with purple and gold, with gold boots and shorts, big old buff dudes, and they was barking and doing all that. You know what I mean? Just definitely they, like a presence there. And then I heard these guys come out that were that had like this chant that was and it was like ice, ice, baby, baby, too cold, ice, the black and gold. And that was in 1989. I never forgot that. And it was the first time that I had ever seen. My stepdad is a member of Omega Psi Phi. So I knew about that organization, but I wasn't immersed in it. And so that was the first time that I saw fraternities in that way before, and it always stuck with me. So that's my Omega Psi Phi story and my Alpha Phi Alpha story. So what is your story to Alpha Land, as I think I heard you all say in one of your speeches? Andre, how did you end up here?
Sure. I grew up in the Bay Area, and there's a gentleman named Carl Ray who was starting the Black college trips, and he would take us out, to Tuskegee, Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta, Morris Brown. And I knew I wanted to go to HBCU from that. And I went through a real militant phase, probably about age 16, real getting into, the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, X-Clan, Public Enemy, Paris, Black Panthers. That was my thing, so
the red, the black.
Yeah. That's right. I'd see fraternity sororities, and I kind of thought of myself as a Kappa. I thought they were cool. But I got to Howard, and I would see, these guys walking around, and something about them drew me, and they'd have on the back of their jackets, Tutankhamun, Amun Ra, all these things that I was really getting deep into because I was really into, Egyptology and things like that. So for me, it felt like it was a journey towards a destiny. I went there on a wrestling scholarship. My wrestling coach was an alpha. While I was at Howard, my dad became an alpha on the alumni side, and
oh wow,
eventually got invited one day to the meeting, and there's about 50 dudes in there, and we're just sitting there, and you're hearing all the things you're supposed to do to join. And I'll just back up. At Howard, everything was a fraternity or a sorority. I was on the wrestling team. We had 5-body slammer. It wasn't really organized, but there was a process. It was a rites of passage. And I thought that the chapter of Roots, when I was reading it about the rites of passage, the manhood training, that was something that just resonated, and I wanted that. But I didn't know what Howard meant to the Divine Nine. I didn't know what Beta chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated meant to Alphadom, and hearing one of our members say, Alpha started at Cornell, but it became at Howard, and it kind of, you didn't know that in the moment. You just happened to be on campus and you're identifying with, oh, that guy's the head of the, School of Business. That guy's the vice president of the School of Engineering. You're starting to connect with these people, and you start to feel like you're at home. So I joined, and I went out in 93, was enjoying the process, got to right at the beginning of the process, and my grades had slipped. So I was no longer eligible to go through in 93. And that just killed me, because I was putting so much effort into it. And then I heard, just through side conversations, one of the older brothers that I had sat on his floor and got to know, he had asked, hey, what happened to Andre? I thought he was going to be on this line. And that meant something to me that, I didn't think they would even connect with me. So I come back in 94 and there's a moratorium. So moratorium meant no one could do anything. And this time I had everything lined up. I had my grades right. I had my nice light schedule for the spring. I had it all set up. So it was getting to be frustrating, but luckily in 95, I was able to go through. But now you're talking about 9 guys that I knew for over a year, and now we're adding up 4 new guys, and you're making that line, that unit. But to me, it was one of those things. When I got the note that I was going to be online, I was like, this is exactly what I came for. I can't wait. That, they're going to have to kill me for me not to finish this. And if that dude over there did it, I'm definitely going to finish this and go through. Yeah. So, we're celebrating 30 years this year, and, we've lost two of our line brothers have died in the last 5 years. So now these are memories when we get together. We really bond. We talked earlier about, where do you feel comfortable? Well, those guys on my line, they know me before I'm me. They knew me before my wife knew me. So it's a different relationship. So my journey was that. And then I was living abroad, and I got a word that my college chapter was about to get suspended. And that's when I said, oh, I need to get back into this. What am I doing for my college chapter? I'm over here, maybe I'll send a dues check every now and then, but I'm not really in. So I made it my mission when I got to San Diego that I was going to be active. I was going to be engaged. I was going to do whatever was necessary to serve in this community.
I love that. I love that. What has the fraternity meant to you? Like what are some things that the fraternity has given to you in your journey, maybe mental health wise, or just encourage, or your success, or what are some things that you think could be directly attributed to your fraternity in some way? Maybe not directly, but in some way.
They say your network is your net worth, right? Mm-hmm. And a big part of my network is Alpha Phi Alpha. And it may not be all. There might be, sigmas, omegas, kappas on that list, but it all starts with that one connection. So, I work at Microsoft. It was Alpha that, put a good word in for me before I went and interviewed there. I've been to Africa. It was an Alpha that started the Step Africa trip that I went there. Again, my dad's an Alpha, so all his friends who are Alphas, were the ones that were checking in on me when he passed. So for me, it's been a place for me to really reflect and appreciate this journey of life that we're on, because the more I put into it, the more I learn about the historical significance, whether it's Dr. King, whoever else you find out, oh, this was an Alpha. You just learn so much. You just sit back and you go, man, I used to be in a room with these guys. These are guys from college that I'm talking about. And you'd hear what they're doing now, and I would just be feeling honored that I'm in that room, and I would even feel in the moment, dang, how did I get into this? Like you know, I'm mediocre. How did I? These guys are like, you know, this guy got a Chick-fil-A all of a sudden. You know, he's 25. You know, so you hear these stories, and what it's meant to me is the inspiration to do better. You know, they say iron sharpens iron. I always feel, you know, when I'm presenting, if I'm preparing something, and there's going to be alphas in that room, I'm going that much harder to make sure that it's delivered with excellence.
I love it.
Amen.
I love it. You represent well, man. I tell you, I don't know like your core principles and all that, but I think I could if I could, let me just go out on a limb and say I believe you're probably a really amazing alpha man, and you probably represent your fraternity really well. And so thank you.
Well, I was brother of the year for last year for the Western region. I'll put that.
Oh yeah, because I mean, alpha men, you know, humility runs in y'all's blood. I can see it now. Thank you, Andre. Now
the humble guy.
Now it's starting to come out, right? I told you.
Yeah.
I told you.
Yeah. Go on and pop your collar real quick, Dre, before we pass it on to Johnnie, so he can give us his story that you see now that you know. No, Johnnie, what is Alpha Phi Alpha meant to you? What's your journey to the organization?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this, right? So I was in a step ministry at my church when I was in middle school and high school. And so we got exposed to a lot of D9, right? And then just growing up in Dallas, D9 is everywhere, right? I remember being at a festival when I was younger, and it was I was with my parents, and there's a bunch of D9 in there doing their chants and stuff like that. And I was like, well, first of all, what's going on? Is this a gang? Like, what's happening? Like, where are we at? And then I started noticing that everybody had these weird letters on, you know, and so that was really my first real exposure. I was young, and but really, what really opened my eyes to what Alpha is, and kind of what made me want to join. So our senior pastor over at Concord in Dallas, he used to be my Sunday school teacher, right? And so you know, we would give him hell in class, and every now and then he wears letters or wears something that represented Alpha. But I was always looked up to him, right? He just was it's kind of different than than the guys that were over our step team. I remember we went to a step show when I was like maybe in 7th, 8th grade, and at that step show, I got to see everybody on display, right? Got to see the Kappas. They got kicked off stage for shooting whipped cream all over the place. I was like, that ain't me. I saw the Omegas hopping around. I was like, that ain't what I'm really into. But then the UNT Alphas performed, and this might have been in 1997, 98, something like that. And so when I saw them, I was like, oh, I like that. I was like, I like that. And so already having the 2 and 2 put together, right? I had my Sunday school teacher, which I looked up to, and then I saw them brothers on stage, you know, well, they weren't brothers then, but, you know, seeing them on stage then, that really kind of just wired me. After that, it was Alpha or nothing. So went to college. I graduated. I went to Tuskegee for a year before coming into the Navy. And to Andre's point, everybody pledges, right? I was in the band. You pledge your drum line. You pledge KK side, the band there. But Alpha wasn't on the yard. They were off the yard at that point. But our drum major was an Alpha. And so just seeing him and seeing how he moved and the way he was, I was like, man, that's just kind of reaffirming what I always wanted to do. And so coming to the Navy, my only real opportunity at that point was to come in grad. And so that was always a goal of mine. I wasn't eligible until I got my degree in 2018. So 2018, I got my degree and submitted my interest, expressed interest in 2019. And this was early January, but I had just missed the, our informational. So it's kind of like one of those, hey, not this year, just keep working. And so they invited me out to the MLK parade to volunteer, or not invited, but he told me like, hey, if you want to get to know some people or you want to get around some alphas,
he told you.
Just come volunteer. No, it wasn't like that. It was just like, hey, this is an opportunity, right?
Right. Come check it out.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And so I submitted my little volunteer form that same day, and I went out there, and just to see Alpha's impact on San Diego was another point of reaffirmation, right? So just seeing how they all interacted with each other, the conversations we had. I remember I was walking with Brother Stewart, picking up trash and peeling plastic off the gutters and stuff like that. And he was talking to me about his journey into Alpha. And then, you know, I break away and I meet somebody else, and they talking to me about their journey in Alpha, what they're doing in their career. And a lot of those conversations just really resonated with me. And I knew that was another sign that I was going in the right direction. So I crossed all of 21. My line is the best line to come through Zeta Sigma Lambda chapter, final 4. We started with 8, we finished with 4, you know, so we always wear that, you know, and we, you know, this new line, the line, our Neos, they're trying to uproot us, but, you know, they won't get there. So, but it's always good to have that healthy competition within the chapter and the fraternity, you know, because like Andre said, you know, iron sharpens iron. So I know anything I'm doing, I don't care if it's just a presentation about my committee or if I'm leading a meeting or anything like that. And I've learned this from Andre, right? I better have an agenda ready. I better, you know, make sure I'm checking everything, make sure everything's right. Because let me get in front of this brother. If I have a letter misspelled or something, a word misspelled or a number off, he's gonna call me on it, just like all the other brothers will. So it makes you work a little harder to be sure you're on point. So that's really what I've taken from it. And like he talked about the networks, the brotherhood, it's just been a really good experience.
Outstanding. I appreciate that, brothers. And you know, one of the things we talked about last night is these conversations can go on. And we enjoyed talking to you guys last night before we do a pre-show for those that don't know, and then talking tonight. But we know we're taking time out of your lives and taking you away from your wives and your family and all that stuff. So we're going to give you that time back. But I wanted to thank you as well for taking your time out. One of the things that I learned a long time ago when I first came to San Diego is that there's something about the D9 and the brothers and sisters that decide to be a part of it that makes them slightly set apart. And not everybody's the same. I don't want to suggest that, and not everybody within any organization. But what we hope to do with this part of the series is to demystify some of it. You know, the D9 was started as secret societies, right? They were just, we've got secret handshakes and secret words and all that stuff that we do. And sometimes now that we're older, people don't want to approach us when they see us together with our group or frat or our sorority, because they think we're so close to each other that we don't have any space for them. And so what I'm hopeful, and you guys have set us on the right tone, is to demystify some of it, to let people see that, hey, there's some alpha men that are smart, articulate, just like I knew them to be, right? They carry themselves well, but they're also regular dudes, right? That go through the stuff that the rest of us go through. They didn't all join in college. They didn't all join the grad chapter. There's a wide range. Some of them know each other better than others. And so if you see us out, any of the D9 members, when we're wearing our colors and our letters, I hope people understand, don't be afraid to approach us to find out more about what we're doing. And so I appreciate you guys talking a little bit about the fraternity. Certainly people know now a couple people that they can try to reach out to get more information. You know, we talked about being on social media like LinkedIn and places like that so people can connect with us. And I appreciate all the people that have tuned in tonight to listen to this, especially the ones that shared their comments through YouTube about what they've experienced and got from the program as we've gone through tonight. So I appreciate Tara and Portia and Jeffrey and Monroe, right? All of y'all that have been a part of it. Tom at the beginning, who was giving me grief about not being here. I got here. It's all good. So I don't worry about any of that stuff. I'm just so blessed and grateful. This is beyond my wildest dreams. It is part of what my Father in heaven hopes for us to be able to do is have these conversations. I appreciate the two of you to be willing to be honest, real, vulnerable tonight in these conversations so that people can see that side of it and realize that we're not these robots that don't have any feelings, that get through life and everything just sails along, that there's struggles along the way. And if people see that, they can hopefully make their own journey better. And then, Jason, I'm just going to turn it back over to you to close this out in prayer like you so ably do every time, except for when Pastor T was here.
Yeah, he told me God ain't going to listen if I talk. I need some other men to help me confront Pastor T because he can't be talking to me like that. That's not nice. But
we'll get him when we get the Omegas on here. So
yeah. Well, right on, man. And I echo everything.
One of the most faithful organization this year at Baby. Yeah, just ask that question. You know, I think it was Alphas, right, Johnny? Yeah,
wow.
I'm pretty sure it was the Alphas. Yeah.
One thing I love about y'all, about the Divine Nine, is when y'all get to poking and you guys know all these little nuances about each other. So it's funny to hear all the. You know, I love that kind of stuff, man. You all represent really well, and so we do every week. Of course, we always pray to close out our time on the podcast. So I always say, just in full transparency, I am a Christian. That's a tradition that I follow, and so we do this to honor what we believe God has called us to do. This, and so if anybody that is watching, that will watch, thank you for watching. If you don't pray, feel free to log off, but. We just want to give thanks to God for doing what he promised to do for us. We would be remiss if we didn't give thanks. So, Dad, I just want to say thank you for this time. I just want to thank you for these two incredible men from the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I just thank you for the transparency, for their honesty. I thank you for their lives, for their journeys, for their families, for all of the things that they've done in their lives, for the success that they bring, to honor their families, but also to honor the organization that they belong to. I just want to say thank you for the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated that spurs that type of excellence in men like this. And so I pray that somebody would hear something that was said today that would resonate, spark something in them, maybe some curiosity, maybe would be encouraged to be bolder about how they feel, or that they would somehow find some common ground with one of these brothers here. So thank you for them spending their time with us. And I thank you for Mike for this vision that he had for this podcast that brings us to be able to have these kind of conversations. We're just so grateful. Last I saw him, I just want to say thank you for Black men in the world. I just want to say thank you for creating Black men and just the stories that are told, the resilience that's on display, the strength and the courage and tenacity and all the things that Black men represent to this world. I just want to say thank you for that. I'm just very, very grateful. So thanks for being so faithful the way that you are, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are so grateful that you were here tonight. For those of you that stayed and watched the whole thing, Tara, thank you for allowing Johnnie to come in here, and he did well. Don't whoop on him too bad. He did really well. And Andre, you said your wife, what was your wife's name?
JT.
JT. I was gonna say it, but JT, he did well. You see, he did well. Y'all got two good men, so y'all remember that. Rub their feet tonight, because they went out on a limb tonight and got some of that fruit. But those of you that watched the whole time, thank you. Those of you that are going to watch later, thank you. We appreciate you. We'll be here every single Tuesday, except for the first Tuesday of every month. We won't be here because we partner with another organization that meets, a Black men's mental health circle that meets at Martin Luther King, at Malcolm X Library at 6 p.m. every first Tuesday of the month. So if you're around, come and check them out. And we'll see you next week as we host the men from the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So until then, we'll see y'all. Take care.